Hello, Groovers. Welcome to the big interview. It's me, Graham. Our guest this time is Mark Schwarzer, whose achievements with Middlesbrough, Fulham and Australia genuinely constitute the word legend. I meet Mark regularly across the Champions League, at Mestalla, at Camp Nou. He's broadcasting for Optus and doing brilliantly. The reason we chose him is that he had an elite career, set records, made European finals. But beyond that, he's a very bright, interesting man, a great storyteller. We begin with his early years in Germany and some wonderful, legendary players like Jonny Ekstrom, the Swede, Jens Jeremies, remember him from the all-conquering Bayern Munich team, and the push factors that brought him to the Premier League via Chris Kamara's Bradford. Middlesbrough and Fulham fans, herein lie some brilliant, exciting European nights, astonishing achievements, big names, slayed by Schwarzer and co. They happened, they were real, relive them. But buried in there, David James playing up front, that astonishing Robbie Fowler penalty that put Schwarzer and his team into Europe and pushed them towards glory. Then the fallout with Steve McClaren. I haven't heard Mark speak like this about his relationship with the former England manager and Manchester United coach. It got pretty tough between the two of them. So, thank you to Mark, thank you to the Oatlands Park Hotel in Surrey for hosting us, and thank you to Luke and his team at False 9 Films, who made this the first filmed big interview. Hope you've liked it, hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be more very soon, and in the meantime, thank you for everybody, every single person behind us getting the silver medal in Best Sport Podcast at the British Podcast Awards 2019. Love you all. We do this for you, Groovers.
You see, you know me in the big interview by now. You know that I merit this gorgeous, lush, leafy garden. And it's a bit of a castle that we're recording this particular big interview in. And to complement that, to complement the luxury, the 5-star beauty of where we are, we've gone to a 6-star man. The idea that you're an international man, given your roots, which are German, Australian, you're bilingual at least, you are a linchpin of why, you're an example of why the Premier League has become great over your career. And I wonder what, as an Aussie, how England's won your heart. Because that's not the easiest combination in the world.
Yeah, I think for me it was very easy. I mean, I came from Germany to begin with, so I went from Australia to Germany for 2.5 years, and that period of time was a really difficult time. It was an unbelievable learning curve, one that I don't regret. I'm actually fortunate that I experienced how hard it was. But then the opportunity then came to come to England, and I just felt like I was coming home. There were so many similarities to being in Australia in terms of the mentality. I love so many things about England. That's why we decided to stay here. So from day one, I felt at home. I felt first and foremost, as a footballer, I felt valued when I came here, when Chris Kamara signed me back in the day.
He's coming up.
He's coming up. Just every time I put on a shirt to go and play, I just felt at home.
What does that mean about being valued, and compared to what?
Well, when I went to Germany, it was back in 1994.
You're talking about Dresden originally.
I was in Dresden, turned up, and it was 5 years after unification between East and West. There was a real divide between East Germans and West Germans, let alone foreigners. So you were classed as you're from the West, so you're kind of a foreigner. So there was a divide even amongst the team. So a lot of these guys, there was an opportunity to make a lot of money after the unification. They didn't want anyone from the West coming in and taking any of their positions, any of their jobs, their teammates, their friends.
We finally had a break in life. Things are going our way, and look who's coming in now.
Yeah, that's right. And me coming from Australia, and then all just going, well, he's got a German passport, but he speaks with this funny accent. He's from Australia. What do they know about football?
When you say funny accent, you were speaking in German?
I was speaking in German, yes. You couldn't, there was very few guys in the east part of Germany at that time that spoke in English. So I had to speak German, and I understood pretty much everything. Dealing with the accent, which was very different, the dialect was very different in east part of Germany, in Sachsen, as the area is called, to what I was used to. My mum and dad sort of grew up around Stuttgart area, which is Schwäbisch.
It's also, I mean, geographically, in terms of wealth,
yes,
in
very
terms
different.
of self-perception, it's extraordinarily different.
Very different. I mean, you know, you've got to go back in time and think about Second World War. 80% of Dresden was demolished. This is a country, a part of the world that was just rebuilding after unification. There were building sites everywhere. I remember going to a shopping centre and standing, looking, like wanting to buy something, and then looking over to the cash register, and there was a line about 20 metres long of people. And I just thought, what's going on here? Why is there no one else on any tills? And I looked over, there was another till about literally 20 metres away, and there was one person standing there, as in behind the till, waiting to serve people, but no one there. So basically what it was the locals were so indoctrinated about lining up, queuing for something, they just found it normal. They would stand in a queue, because back in the time of communism, they would stand in queues for hours on end just to get bread, just to get the basic necessities. And they were doing the same thing then. This was 5 years afterwards. And it was a world away from what I was used to, being 21 years old, moving to Germany on my own, understanding a lot of the language, but needing to learn it a lot better. I had a teammate who was from the West, who lived in the same estate where I was living, and he spoke with a bit of a stutter, and nobody could understand him, and he was German.
Wow.
So he would speak, and they would turn to me and go, "What did he say?"
Was this because their world had been so sheltered?
That part of it was that. Part of it was the fact that his stutter got worse when he was speaking to guys that he wasn't that comfortable with. I was with him every day, and he could speak quite normally with me and wouldn't be nervous. And obviously, I got to know his dialect, his pronunciations, and I could understand everything he was saying. So I would then, this Aussie who had been there for a couple of months was translating for the Germans for a German. It was bizarre.
Did the city have any sort of Len Dayton feel to it, even though unification had come, or was there still a concept of people looking at the inhabitants? Was there a dearth of goods?
No, there was an influx from the West, and there was, I think, too much too quickly for people to digest. And then there was this influx of a lot of Western investment. The city was being completely renovated, and I think people would they were amazed at what it was like to be in a Western society. You know, things that were just at their disposal, like normal. It was easy to get that previously they never had. And I think that was the biggest. I mean, I remember having another teammate there. He was from East Germany, and he was telling me stories about his mum and dad are both deaf, and they were I think his father was in the military, and they were on welfare in the east part of Germany. And he was saying that pre-unification, there was the Stasi police. So he was investigated all the time. Everyone was expected to spy upon each other. And he was telling me stories like it was proper spy stuff. So he'd receive a message, something like, I don't know, the sun is going to shine in the morning. And he knew what that meant.
That's a code.
That was a code. And he was expected to spy on a teammate. And in turn, he was being spied on. And everyone was spying on everyone. And they told him, they threatened him, and they said to him, if you didn't, your parents would lose their benefits. And, you know, it was insane, the stories that you used to hear.
I don't want to move away from the social, but like you started to equate your feeling of comfort in England from having bridged from Sydney via Dresden and another place. But I can't, because I'm just self-indulgent. I can't go past Dresden without asking you about two guys. Jens Jeremies, who was about to bloom, and Jonny Ekstrom, who I think maybe his best days had gone.
Yeah, to right at the end of it.
Genuinely extraordinary footballers, neither of whom I've met.
Yeah, I mean, Jonny Ekstrom, the nicest man in the world. I mean, he came from Italy at the time, turned up, and, you know, he was just the most relaxed man in the world.
Bit of a specimen, I remember. I mean, Swedish, we're talking about, for those who don't know, Swedish centre forward. I think Gothenburg had been his.
I think that's where he started off,
It's not a test. No. I think so. If I'm wrong,
I'm pretty sure it was.
If I'm wrong, Swedes, you know, tell me.
He, you know, he was a proven goal scorer. He was something that we genuinely needed a player to try and score goals for us in the Bundesliga. Dresden were always punching above their weight. It was a club that, behind the scenes, it was boiling over in terms of the way it was run. They had a president, that's another story altogether, who was always on the borderline or on an edge of legal and illegal dealings. And as it turns out, he ends up in prison not so long afterwards. The club pretty much loses its licence and goes into amateur league because of it. But anyway, he was a phenomenal player. He was someone that everyone looked at as the person that was going to hopefully keep Dresden in the Bundesliga. And as we all know, one player not necessarily is going to do it. I mean, it can be a big influence, but he was never going to really, with the players that we had around. Jens Jeremies, he was a young kid coming through. I'm pretty sure I made my Bundesliga debut at the same time as he did, in the game against Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And all heart, and just an unbelievable engine. And he just ran and ran and ran. And, he turned out to be a phenomenal player. I mean, you could see the signs already there at a very young age. Good kid, someone who was so hungry to succeed.
He'd go on to be a motor of that extremely good Bayern Munich team, reaching the Champions League final two, 3 times in the space of very short.
Yep.
And what seemed to me added to his game wasn't just that initial seek and destroy, running power. Once he got the ball, he actually became quite, without necessarily being Hoddle-esque, he became quite commanding about once he'd won the ball high, he'd release it really well, and people fed off him.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. No, he was really a diamond in the rough at the time, and it was very unfortunate for Dresden at the time to lose its license, to be relegated, lose its license, because I think, he may have stayed a bit longer had they stayed in the Bundesliga. Maybe not, but he was a player that I think particularly Dresden will see as one of their own and be very fond of what he achieved.
So the president's not yet in jail, okay?
Nope.
It's Saturday the 6th of May, and by tea time on Saturday the 6th of May, 95, was your dad a bit pissed off with you? Because Stuttgart came to town with Thomas Berthold playing, Dunga playing, Gio Elber, Freddie Bobic. Freddie Bobic, who's now, I think he's Eintracht Frankfurt director of football.
I think he might be.
I could be wrong about that. Right. And I don't know if that was your dad's team, Stuttgart.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And Jeremy scores.
Well, both the games I played in, I was very fortunate for a lot of reasons. My fortunate scenario was that we were pretty much almost relegated. And when I say that, I mean the president at that stage wasn't willing to spend a lot of money. So, and what that means is that at the time, internationals didn't have breaks. We didn't have breaks in the league. So international teams were playing, and they would have to go, and they go and play their national team games and come back, and they'd potentially miss games. Previously, up until those 2 games, the chairman or the president kept paying for a private jet for the #1 goalkeeper, Stanislav Cherchesov, who is now Russia's national team coach, who managed them at the World Cup, Confeds Cup, and he was the #1 goalkeeper. And he kept bringing him back very quickly after international games to make sure he was fit and ready to play for the games. And then because we looked like we weren't going to stay in the league, and I think maybe the manager at the time said to him, you should give him a go, regarding to me. And for whatever reason, he decided not to not pay for the private jet, and I ended up playing those 2 games. And I played really well in both of those games. And in both of those games, I felt very unfortunate to concede goals and lose against Eintracht Frankfurt, but also to concede very late against VfB Stuttgart. So yeah, it was very, very disappointing, but I felt that I'd performed really well at that level. Was
there something riding on the game at all, the fact that it was your dad's team?
We still had a chance to stay in. So there was still hope that we could stay in the Bundesliga, and obviously we hadn't given up. So, I thought, you know what, if I can come in here and make a difference and we can keep a clean sheet and we can even do the unexpected and win against a very, very strong VfB Stuttgart side, then you never know. Maybe I'll get a chance to keep my spot, but it wasn't to be.
The fact that Dresden prepared you for England, either that's the factor or Chris Kamara is the factor.
Well, I think it was the whole German experience. So it was Dresden to start with. We got relegated, then I moved on to Kaiserslautern. And again, it was that experience of Kaiserslautern, 18 months of it, the trials and tribulations of it, having an opportunity to play in the first team, played well in my first game, second game okay, third and fourth I didn't play so well. And then obviously I was out of the side, which is understandable. And then there was the teammates issue. There was a goalkeeper there, Gary Ammann, who had been at the club forever. And he was living in the past, talking about every time we'd train on the stadium, he'd talk about a game against Barcelona. They beat Barcelona one time in a European Cup game. And he was 37 years old and didn't want to do the training, but wanted to sit on the bench each week because he would financially gain for it.
Okay.
And he would just, at every opportunity he had, he would put me down. So I got called up to the national team completely out of the blue. And it was something that I only got called up because I think it was Mark Bosnich at the time pulled out last minute. And I was the closest one there and they called me up. And I remember coming in after training and as I walked in, Gary Amon talking to, I think it was Andreas Bremer. And they said, oh, did you hear, you know, Mark's been called up to the national team. And he went, what, for basketball? So that was kind of like forever, you were always put down. And I felt I was always being put down all the time. I never had the respect from my teammates. And that's a hard environment to be in. Mm-hmm. So you're continuously fighting, firstly, to have an opportunity to play on the team, but getting respect from your own teammates was almost non-existent for me. So that experience, and then we had Otto Rehagel come in as manager, and he just didn't like young players at all. So I found myself being on the bench to being out of the team altogether. And when I asked him about it, he just went, well, we've got Gary Amon here. I want to see if he's still able to sit on the bench. I went, well, at 37, you want to know if he can still sit on a bench? And I just went, I didn't understand it. And fortunately for me at the time, Hans-Peter Briegel was the team manager. Okay. So I went straight to see him. And
he must have been relatively young for a team manager.
He was quite young, yes, that's right. And I went, and I think it was one of his first jobs as being a manager of a club. So I went straight to him and I said to him, listen, you know, unfortunately I've tried everything. This new manager does not care about young players. This is what my situation is. I need to get out of here. For the sake of my sanity, for the sake of my career, I need to leave. And he goes, okay, let me talk to the manager, I'll come back to you. So literally in a day or two, he came back to me, we had a meeting, and he said, I've spoken to the manager said, you can go. So that's all I needed to know. So from that point onwards, it was no longer about that team, that club, it was about getting myself right and ready to go on trial somewhere, because I knew I had to go trial somewhere. And my prime objective was to try and get out of Germany and go to England.
Why England?
Because it was a league that I felt that goalkeepers were always respected and appreciated. And I knew the league. I followed it as a kid.
From TV? All
the time. We had some Australian players playing there. We had Mark Bosnich playing there. It was kind of the forefront of Australian goalkeepers overseas. John Filan, Steve Mortone. We had a list of goalkeepers who were playing in England or at various clubs. So my wife wanted to work. She's got a degree in economics and majored in finance. So I wanted to go back into working. That was the best place for her to go. And by chance, this national team call up. I spoke to various players, every player that was playing in England. So we had Lucas Neal, Harry Kewell, Kevin Muscat, Stan Lazaridis, all these guys were playing in England, and I was asking every one of them, who's your agent?
Kevin, in his part, was terrorising England rather than just playing in England.
Absolutely.
I think it's worth making that clear.
Absolutely. And all of them came back with one agent, basically, who was helping Australian players, and it was Barry Silkman. And Barry arranged, literally within a week, a trial for me at Manchester City. At the time, was Steve Coppell was the manager. And I arranged everything for my club in Germany. And as fate would have it, the number one goalkeeper gets injured. So then I'm expected to sit on the bench, because then I'm no longer number two, I'm number three. Had I been number two, I probably would have played in the second, because Kaiserslautern at the time got relegated and were in the second division. And I potentially would have played. And who knows, my career may have taken a completely different turn, who knows. But it wasn't to be. And they still allowed me to go, so long as I was back for each game. So I could go on a Sunday after a game, so long as I was back on the Friday, that was fine. So I managed to go to Manchester City and went on trial there for a week. Alex Stepney was the goalkeeping coach.
Oh, what a legend.
And he was brilliant, and I trained.
Alex Hands.
Yeah.
After the Champions League final in Glasgow, I met him and I talked to him, because he was always punching and catching leather balls that were wet. Alex Hands are been massive.
That's right.
Not as they were born,
no,
but bruised and battered and swollen. And
and funny how it is, you know, like the German connection always followed me. So I go to Manchester City and they had Eike Immel, Michael Fronzek, and Uwe Rosler at the club. And Eike Immel at the time was on the outer, and they were desperately looking for another goalkeeper. So when they're on trial, and I trained with them, and then I played a friendly behind closed doors, and everything went really, really well. And they went, right, we need you back to play in a reserve grade game, in a proper official game.
Yeah.
So I went back to Germany, and a couple of weeks later, there was a reserve grade game coming up, and I managed to come back over again and play in it. And who was it against? It was against Bradford City in Bradford. And and funny enough, Phil Neal was the assistant manager, and he was taking the reserve grade.
Phil Neal, who won so many European Cups for Liverpool, fullback.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the story goes, he walked into the office where Chris Kamara was sitting and said to him, right, how good's your team? Have you got a good team out there today? And he said, yeah, listen, I've got a pretty good team. I've got a pretty number of first-team players coming back from injury, some players just getting some games. And yeah, no, we've got a strong team. He says, great. He says, we've got this goalkeeper on trial, and he's been doing really well all week, and we really want to test him. Anyway, so I play the game, and I play really well, and we won 1-0, and we should have lost. But we won 1-0.
Because you played well, right?
I played well.
Okay.
And Chris Kamara got on found out who my agent was and called him straight after the game and said, we want him. So I was kind of like sitting there, and it was ironic again. I was sitting in the bus, and we got a whole lot of fish and chips delivered to us on the bus. And I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, this is amazing. This is like, you know, this is what I'm missing. And my agent rang me and said, listen, I've got Bradford City on the phone, and they want you to come in. I said, listen, that's great, fantastic. I said, but we've got to do the right thing by Manchester City, first and foremost. They brought me over. They have first opportunity to see whether they want to sign me. And anyway, so it went on for a while. And then apparently what happened was, I spoke to Steve Coppell the next day. He told me they wanted to buy me. I was £155,000 to buy outright.
That's a chunk of change at that stage.
Yeah, it was okay. It was very reasonable. And Steve Coppell apparently was promised £10 million at the time to buy players when he first went to Man City. And I was apparently like the third or fourth player that he tried to sign for little money, and the club kept saying, no, you can't, you can take him on loan. And I refused to go anywhere on loan. I wanted a clean break from Germany.
Play for somebody that's shown they want you.
That's right. And 2 days later, Steve Coppell resigned.
He didn't last long.
So I apparently was the final one where he wasn't allowed to buy, that he walked and went, there's no point. And he walked. So Phil Neal took over, still wanted to sign me, but at this stage the club was in disarray.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a contract sent over, there was a zero missing off figures, it was a nightmare. And in the end, at this point, it had dragged on for probably a good 4 or 5 weeks. And then Bradford were hot onto it.
They were ready, were they?
And they again wanted to loan me. I said, no chance. I need to go permanently. So they went, okay, we'll buy you. And at this stage, then we decided, you know what? Only fair is fair now. Man City have had enough opportunity to buy me. They couldn't sort themselves out. And I ended up signing for Bradford City.
I used to work at Sky as on Revista and come in from Spain and see Chris Kamara around quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we'd stayed in the same hotel once. I saw him at reception, he was going on out. And he said, I'm going out to sing. I said, oh, brilliant, are you a karaoke singer? And I swear to you, because, you know, Chris is a sort of English version of Sinatra.
Yes, that's right.
And he's a professional singer.
That's right.
But, so I'm asking you now, as a first-time witness, can he sing?
Yeah, I think he can, yeah.
Did he never sing to you as manager?
No, not as manager. So he was a different Chris Kamara as a manager than he is now. You saw glimpses of what he is now as a manager.
Meaning?
Well,
the ebullience or the...
no, he was very emotional. He was up and down like this all the time. I remember one game we played away at Crystal Palace, and we were winning 1-0, and we were being bombarded. And I was coming out, taking crosses and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, they scored 2 late goals. One was from a cross, and I can't remember the other one. Anyway, after the game, he's come in and he's lambasted me and said, you should have come out and taken that cross. And I went, I mean, this is a game where I come out and took everything. And I think that's the problem. The problem was I kept coming out and taking stuff, and then when someone scored from a header, he's like, well, how come he's in taking that one? So he lambasted me, and I just went, Gaffer, I don't know. I said, from my perspective in that game, I don't believe I could have. But unless you tell me otherwise, and go and watch it on the video, you tell me that, then I'll hold my hand up. But I said, from my understanding of it in the game, I don't think I could have come for it. Anyway, fast forward at training the next day, calls me up and says, listen, you're right, I'm sorry. So he was just emotional all over the place.
That's very good.
It was very good.
That's unusual.
There's very few managers that can do that.
They won't back down because they see, even if they've been wrong, they see it as undermining their own authority.
No. He was great. And listen, my experience with Chris Kamara was brilliant. I mean, he's a manager that I knew believed in me. He trusted me. Of course, I performed for him, but it works 2 ways because you know that someone believes you. It's like me going to Fulham with Roy Hodgson. I knew, and Mike Kelly and Ray Lewington, I knew they had my back. They believed in me. And even if I made a mistake, I'd come in and go, listen, guys, I'm really sorry, I made a mistake. They go...
Above any position in that football team, a keeper knowing that is paramount.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this whole thing about swapping and changing, I don't ever see it working out that well. I find it just creates so much uncertainty amongst the goalkeepers. And I think we saw it at Liverpool a couple of seasons ago with Karius and Mignolet. They end up having two goalkeepers that don't perform well because they don't know whether one mistakes you out of the team.
See, I grew up when England couldn't decide between Shilton and Clements.
Yep.
And they rotated them.
Yes.
Not all the time,
yes,
but very regularly, particularly Ron Greenwood. And nobody else around Britain was doing that at all. You had a first-choice goalkeeper, second-choice goalkeeper. Because they were so good, it seemed to work. I know that it certainly wasn't what either of them wanted, but, and again, it's not a club side, so maybe there's a slight difference.
I get it, because you're playing week in, week out for your club, and then when you get together from internationals, it works.
You're still, in between, you're still getting the hard action that you need.
Yes, you are. And whereas at a club, you're not. You know, you're back in and out all the time. And it does play on you. And goalkeepers, it's like any play, you need a run of games to play yourself into a game. Today it's even harder because when I went to Chelsea, I was told, I mean, I was at the latter stages of my career, but Jose Mourinho said to me, listen, I want two goalkeepers that I know I can rely on. Obviously, Petr Cech's number one, you're coming as a number two, but you will play enough games. Because at the time, I was still playing in the national team and I wanted to go to the World Cup in 2014. And, you know, and then what ended up happening towards Christmas time, he actually apologised to me and said, you haven't played the amount of games I thought you'd play. And a lot of that was to do with the fact that Petr never got injured that season until right at the end. Every other season up until that point, he was injured a number of times throughout the course of the season. But for whatever reason, that season, he didn't get injured until Champions League semi-final away at Atletico Madrid. And it was hard. So for me, it was always hard that when you get a chance, you have to try and perform, because if you don't, then they start to ask questions. Is the second goalkeeper the right one? Because he can't just come in and play. He can't play at the level we need to play.
So this is the first leg, right?
Yeah.
And I would honestly say, now not from an English perspective, because I've learned to distance myself from the English media, which is like, English team against somebody else, well, we're going to win a quarter. I still think Chelsea probably went into that tie slight favourites.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
the thing about squads and manager.
Atletico Madrid had a very strong home record in the Champions League, and there was definitely no sense of taking for granted and underestimating the opposition. We knew they were a very good side, and we were really happy with a 0-0 draw away from home. Obviously, we'd have loved to have scored a goal, but the way the game unfolded, losing Petr, when you lose an influential player like that, it's often, it can be the downfall of a team.
But you were ready in every way, given what you'd gone through. No nerves, no worry about your form.
No, it was kind of like, you know what, this is what you trained for, this is what you've been brought in for, just go out there and play.
Did you ever look at the corner of your eye about, oh, here's Costa?
No, no.
He's a bully.
I enjoyed it. It was actually one of my favourite games to have played in. I loved it. It was a lot of.
I was going to say that the Calderon is your type of stadium.
Yeah,
too.
It was brilliant. There was a lot of balls into the box, high balls. There was a lot of confrontation. There was a lot of 50-50 challenges. Costa was always in there. I love that. I mean, you look at throughout my career in the Premier League, and often I bump into Dion Dublin, and we all often joke about that. There's very rarely that contact in the box anymore between a goalkeeper and a big centre forward.
They bring in the International Court of Human Rights, don't they now?
We used to have the biggest tussles, you know, Peter Crouch, when he used to go to Stoke and come up against that Stoke front, you know, the whole team, how big they were. Shawcross come up front, you know, Walters and, you know, and the rest that come in the box, and they bombard you, they run into you, they do all sorts to you. And Duncan Ferguson at Everton, they talk about that FA Cup game when he played Bradford City against
well, you won 3-2 at Goodison.
We won 3-2, but
Duncan was a different kind of...
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You just had to be nice to him. It killed him if you're nice to him. If you fought with him, he loved it, and he wanted to rip your head off, and you didn't want to mess with him because he's that type of character. But if you were nice to him, he didn't know how to deal with it. It was almost like, this guy's a nice guy, I don't want to hurt him. But if he had a reason then to fight
just
you,
as well that comment was never released during his career, because you could have ruined his life.
Yeah. But a lot of us knew, like, it was like, right, just be nice to Duncan. Don't, you know, just tell him,
don't get under his skin.
Talk about his pigeons. Talk about everything else.
He loves them more than life itself, doesn't he?
So it was like, just don't make him angry. When I was younger, I fell into the trap a few times, and he bumped into me, and or you know, a slight bit of an elbow, and you had to go at him, and he just like, you see that look, those eyes.
Loved it. Oh, it's me and you for the next 70 minutes, mate.
It was like, and then afterwards it was like, oh, what have I just done? That was the wrong move. Yeah, so I did it a few times, and yeah, he let you know.
Player who you kind of know is going to run in, and if he can't get the ball, you know he's going to catch you as you're up there and do that to you. Take you from about the thigh, if you go in hard at the thighs where you're off the ground, there's going to be a sort of cartwheel effect. Yeah. And whether you get the foul or the card or whatever, it's you and Mother Earth and the ball. And
I broke my back doing it.
I was going to say, there's going to be breakages.
I broke my back at Swansea. Routledge, ball came far post, and as I came out to take it, he stopped and turned and bent over. Yeah. And it flipped my legs over, and I flipped over and I landed on my shoulders and my neck, and my legs flipped back, and I fractured my T9.
Sorry. T9?
So on the spinal cord, so your vertebrae, not the spinal cord, but on the spine.
I wish I hadn't asked now.
T9.
I think I knew, but...
So top 10% of it. So and what that bone does is it crumbles. It doesn't break in terms like when you break your arm.
Is it like a shock absorber?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it ends up being like that, and it crumbled the top 10% of it. So obviously I was seen to on the pitch, and you don't think that. You know, I'm like, oh, I've hurt my back, it's a bit sore, can I keep, it's actually, I think I can keep going. I end up finishing the game. And I got assessed after the game by the doc, and the doc went, nah, listen, I don't think it's anything too serious. Then I went to training on the Monday, and I was like, no, this is not right, I need to go and get it checked. So they sent me for a scan and went straight into the specialist office, and he went, right, he says, you need a break, you need a rest. I went, like, what do you mean? Like, just for a couple of days? He went, no, you can't play for another couple, you won't be able to play for another couple of weeks now. And I went, because you might not walk off. And I went, what do you mean? I won't walk off and I'll be all right? And he goes, no, you might not walk ever again. I went, okay, I'll take a rest. And the thing was, at the time, my contract was so I had to play 90% of the games up until Christmas for me to give another extension.
Renewal, yeah.
And there were 4 games left. I needed to play 1 game to get 90% of the games. So obviously I didn't make it. And I was, from the injury to playing again, it was 10 weeks. I was back playing in 10 weeks. But the club were brilliant. After 4 weeks, after the second scan and seeing the specialist, and the specialist went, everything's fine, you'd be great, they renewed my contract.
But there were clubs and executives who'd stiff you on that.
Absolutely. I mean, they waited, obviously, which you'd expect them to do. They waited for the all clear from the specialist, and once they got the all clear,
You say you expect them to do, that's exactly my point. Yeah. I expect...
Yeah.
We as fans, not as journalists, when you're out there, you're fighting for us. Yeah. You're carrying our standard. Yeah. And we want our nights to be looked after by the realm.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's not what happens a lot of the time.
No, they were great. They honoured it.
Good for them.
And they were great.
One of the things that your quick adaptation to England brought you, and your feeling at home, brought you this utterly remarkable affair you've had with what was the UEFA Cup and the Europa League. I don't know if you love it or hate it.
No, I love it. Love it.
Well, listen, it doesn't... In that case, you've got a very strong heart.
Doesn't quite mix it with the Champions League, of course, and I was very, very, very fortunate to have played in it. However, it was amazing.
How's your memory? Because we sort of calculated that, if you like the expression, I don't know if you do, but it's quite common now to talk about a sliding doors moment. Yeah. Where something chooses you, as it could have been at Kaiserslautern. Yep. Could have been. But for us, that sliding doors moment that led to a real treasure trove of European memories for you is 2004-05. Yep. Middlesbrough, Man City. Yeah, of course. You can butt in and take up the story anytime you like. I'm just feeding a little... Yeah. We're into injury time. Yeah. Did you remember this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
What happens?
We needed a draw. They needed to win. It was a final to see who would qualify for, the UEFA Cup the following season.
7th place was up for grabs.
That's right. And phenomenal. I mean, Jimmy Floyd-Hasselbank scores a phenomenal free kick from about 40 yards out, smashes in the top corner, David James in goals. And funny enough, I was with David James last week, and we were reminiscing about that game. Well, I was, he wasn't. And it was more about the fact that in the last 15 minutes or so, David James came out of goal, put on a #1 outfield shirt, and went up front. Stuart Pearce was the manager, and I still don't understand why they made that decision.
And David couldn't explain to you about why he was a striker that day?
No, he didn't quite really. I think it was pre-planned, obviously, because he had a number 1 shirt and an outfield player's shirt. So it was obviously pre-arranged. No, I don't think he didn't answer me when I said to him, what was he thinking? And then obviously they get a penalty in the last minute of the game, and Robbie Fowler.
So you're buzzing at that stage. You're not now. About, hold on, that's not a penalty.
Yep.
So you're irked.
That was just like literally bewilderment. It was like, what handball? I didn't even see it.
How quickly did you manage to cleanse the mind at all, or were you still ticked off by the time?
Oh, you still ticked off. Yeah, you don't really, but then you got to go right. You ticked off, put that to one side, and now I've got to focus on trying to make the save.
So Rob Styles is clearing people out of his way.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
I don't know,
there was obviously some arguments going on. Players obviously not happy about the decision, which is clear. And then Robbie Fowler gets the ball, and you know he's going to take it, and it's like, okay. And apparently he was always going to the keeper's right. And for whatever reason, he decides to go to my left.
So you'd done prep, there'd been video prep?
No, that day, in those days, it was very little of that. We had video prep, but weren't analysing the opposition and in terms of penalties and stuff like that. There may have been 1 or 2, can't even really remember, but it wasn't like it's been in the last sort of 5 years or so, where it's just like, you know, you've got literally every penalty taker that's been taking penalties for that club, and you'll have the list there and you'll go through it. And
prior to this game, were you a thinker and a studier when you saw, you know, TV? Did you?
No, not a lot. Not a lot. It was more through experience in terms of playing in the Premier League for so long already, and coming up against these players week in, week out, and having an understanding of the kind of, you know, the style of the way they strike a ball. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm just going to stay on my feet as long as I possibly can and react to his shot. And that's in the end what I did. And he went to my left and I saved it and managed to gather the rebound. And he actually kicked me in the arm afterwards, more out of probably frustration. But it was irrelevant. We hung on, we drew 1-1 and qualified. It was like literally like almost like winning a cup competition.
It was really that emotion.
Oh yeah, the fans were going. I mean, my wife and my father-in-law and my son were at the game. My son was, I think, 4 years old at the time. And people got wind of the fact that my wife was there with my son, and people were picking him up, and my wife was like really panicking, going, "Oh, I'll give him back." And we had some other people who knew us and managed to get him back, and there were people that holding him up.
There's a stage where somebody just...
Yeah, almost, yeah. And it was like a real sense of euphoria around the stadium, yeah.
And if you're sold a project, and if there is a strategy behind Borough, as there was at that time, one of the things, and you reached cup finals,
yep.
I was always going to say galore, would have been European football.
I sat down with Brian Robertson and Viv Anderson for 20 minutes before I signed with them. When I was at Bradford City, Everton, Middlesbrough, West Brom at the time, who were in the first division, they all came in for me and made offers for me. I went and met with Everton and I met with Middlesbrough. So the story is, we went to Everton. My agent Barry Siltman went in and spoke to Johnson, was the manager, the chairman of the club, went inside. He goes, "Do you want to come inside?" I went, "No, I'll stay." Joe Royal was the manager. I said, "No, I'll stay outside." I was outside with my wife, and we ordered a coffee, waiting for a coffee to arrive. And literally within 5 minutes, my agent's walking out of the door, bright red face, and the Johnson's going, the chairman's
Peter
going.
Johnson.
Peter Johnson's going, "You'll be back, and Barry Siltman's going, "No." He says, "The minute we walk out this door, we're not coming back, I guarantee you." And he goes, "No, you'll be back." And the story is that, I mean, what they offered was actually insulting in terms of me coming from Bradford. They supposedly really, really wanted me because they felt that Everton was a far bigger club than Middlesbrough, which it was at the time. And obviously still, you know, in terms of history and everything else, of course. However, that was irrelevant to me. I always felt that, you know, I judged it by the way they treated me right then and there. And then we walked out and never came back again. Went and met with Brian Robertson and Viv Anderson at a hotel in Manchester near the airport. And literally within 20 minutes, sitting down and talking to him for 20 minutes, I was sold.
Two proper football men, two
Absolutely.
legends of the game.
Absolutely.
Told you it straight.
And of course, the contract they offered me, I believed at the time, was they valued me. It was about being valued.
There's a theme.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that jars with me, but not many footballers will look for that or admit to that.
Yeah.
It's a natural human response.
Of course. I pride myself on always being honest in terms of, I can look myself in the mirror and go, right, yes, of course you want to earn £100,000 a week, But what are you, honestly, where is your value? Where do you see yourself, honestly, looking yourself in the mirror and go, where do I lie in the pecking order at this stage in my career? And they were, my analysis and my figure that I came up with was exactly what they offered me. And this is prior to meeting them.
So from the bonanza that comes from that 1-1 draw and saving the penalty, it's all, as far as this interview is concerned, it's all down to you. Where would you take us? Because the run to the final is extraordinary in personal terms, because if I'm not wrong, there's a potential you might leave the club, there's an injury, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But the nights, going back to Stuttgart again and doing them, you know, Stuttgart's unit, Dnipro, people didn't know about so much then, but are a power of their game. Beating Stuttgart, beating Roma, to me, is a massive, gigantic name.
Oh, that was an amazing game at what is it, Stadio
Olimpico.
What a game that was. I mean, we scored after a very short period of time, and then again we got bombarded time and time again, and we managed to hold on. And
it's a gladiatorial arena. It's hostile.
Yeah, and they're Roma, and we're Middlesbrough. Like, what is Middlesbrough doing in the European competition and beating the likes of Roma? and that's how people perceived it. I don't think anybody ever gave us any hope to accomplish what we did. And yes, we didn't win it. But when you look at it, I mean, it goes down as up there with winning the League Cup for Middlesbrough. I mean, that's their first major trophy in the whole history, first and only major trophy in the club's history. But to actually, for them to get, or for us to get to a UEFA Cup final, that is equally as good, if not even better.
And do you remember, because you lose the game against Basel away, and you have to come back to the Riverside and win. I mean, atmosphere, incidents, managers talk. Tell us about Steve McClaren as a leader of the dressing room or a leader of training.
Yeah, it was interesting that period of time, because that was after there was a number of us who actually had falling outs with the manager, particularly around the January period of time. And I was one of them. And I went on the transfer list, and we had a massive disagreement in so many different things. And again, it was going down, reverts back to the manager lost faith in me. He didn't value me anymore. And when I confronted him about it, because I was told it by one of the coaching staff, and who I trusted wholeheartedly, and I still trust him to this day, and Steve McClaren wasn't honest with me. And I said to him, you know, it's clear that you don't value me, because you can't behave like that on the side of the pitch, say what you say about me, and not expect anyone to tell me. And when I talk to you about it, you deny it. And that's where I have a problem. People can't be honest.
Duplicity.
Absolutely. So I pulled him up on it, and I said, listen, I can't play for you anymore, because you don't have any faith in me, and I've lost that trust. So I don't want to play for someone who can't be honest with me and has no trust in me. So I said, you're best off taking me out of the team and let me leave the club. And again, that whole period, again, he wasn't truthful to me. And the club did their utmost to prevent me from going anywhere. And you know, I don't begrudge them for it, because in one way you can see why they do it, and another way, for me as a player, you're obviously bitterly disappointed about it, and it doesn't allow you to move on. Even when we supposedly patched things up, he went and did something again against what he told me he was going to do, and releasing a press release to the media when he said we were going to sit down and do it together and release it publicly together. He went and just did it himself. And at that moment, I actually thought about going back and letting him have it again. And I just thought, you know what? You've got to just suck it up, take it on the chin. And there's a World Cup coming up. Hopefully we can, you know, who knows what's going to happen with this European competition. We need to make sure we're safe in the league and just suck it up. And I did. And there's a whole number of things that happened, and he wanted to throw me back in the team literally that next game, which I thought was wrong in so many ways. I thought it was wrong on Brad Jones, who was playing at the time. I thought it was wrong that on me, I mentally wasn't in the right state, wasn't in the right place. I would have been crucified because the fans were up against me. They were completely against me because they took the club side.
It's been portrayed as
absolutely
a troublesome player.
Absolutely, I was portrayed. There was a large section of the fans that wanted me out anyway. They thought I was past it. So I had to manage it. And there was only one person who was going to manage it, and that was me, because the manager clearly didn't have my interests at heart, and the club didn't at that particular time. So it was up to me to have to manage it. So I basically put my foot down and said, I'm not playing this weekend. I told you I'm not ready to play this weekend, and it's not right on him, Brad Jones, and it's not right on me. So, and that's what happened. From that point onwards, let's just say the relationship was strained, but we made it work.
It's a shame that it's that way. We have very kind sponsors. I'm just going to dip into this, who've sent you questions. Bet365 want to know, I'm just going to perm one. What was the best goal? None of them are good, obviously. What was the best goal ever scored against you?
Best goal ever scored against me? Oh, dear. When I look back at it now, one of the best goals that I can sort of kind of look at now, I still give him grief every time I see him, is Kanu's back heel against me at the Riverside. And, you know, it's a Mickey take. It was pure class and something that probably only the likes of he could do. And he's a lovely guy, so I forgive him for it. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to compensate you for that generosity and honesty, because I think my memory is your record against, your record against the top sides in England is absolutely phenomenal. If you go through Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, the column says 1-8, 1-9, 1-7, irrespective of who you were playing for. Your record against the top English teams across your career is extraordinary. Yeah, it's pretty good. When I was at Middlesbrough, whether it was Middlesbrough, Fulham, particularly, that's where obviously I played the vast majority of my career, and yeah, we always fancied ourselves against the better teams, the so-called better teams, the so-called top six. I don't know, I always loved the challenge. I mean, not that I didn't love the challenge against every other team, I did. It's just, I think, it's only natural. And I experienced it when I was at Chelsea. You know, for every other team playing against the big clubs, you're up against everything. You're up against all the odds, you're up against all the expectation. Everyone writes you off beforehand, so there's an extra incentive for everyone to go out there and prove all the critics wrong. But like, and you made your second ever game, I guess, was against JJ Okocha. Yeah. Two absolute magicians. Oh, phenomenal. I mean, JJ Okocha at the time as well was arguably one of the best players on the planet in that position. He was phenomenal at that time. And I remember you know, that sense of just daunted by the task of trying to contain them, trying to get a result and hopefully try and keep a clean sheet against them, which unfortunately I didn't, but it was an amazing experience. And now, Bet365 also want to know, do you have a favourite manager story? Favourite manager? One of my favourite manager stories is with Roy Hodgson. So Roy'd been to UEFA Cup final before with Inter Milan and lost. And we were away in, we lost to Roma in the second last group game, 3-1. And we had Eric Nevlin came on the pitch and within 5 minutes got a red card. And then, I think it was 1-1 at the time even. And then we went 2-1 down. John Olorisa scored against us. And then Paul Konchesky lost his head and got sent off in the game. So we went down to 9 men, lost the game 3-1. And we had to play Basel last game away, who hadn't lost a European game at home in 3 seasons maybe. And that's including Champions League. So you can imagine the mountain that seemed to be in front of us. And Roy coming in after the game and was like, you know, in Roy's manner, rocking back and forth and spitting and like swearing and carrying on and just going, don't care. Who wants to get to a final and lose? I've already been to one and lost one. And that was it. And the next couple of weeks, or a few rounds into it, so I think it was about the semi-finals, yeah, semi-finals away in Hamburg. We had to travel by bus because of the ash, the volcanic eruption. Of course, it was stopping all the air traffic. It took us 18 hours to get there. We got stuck on the motorway, 2 or 3 hours on the motorway. We had the ball out in the motorway, all that sort of stuff. And we got to the game and we ended up, before going out, I kind of took on this thing, Danny Murphy would do his talk, and then I would finish off before we walk out. And I went on and went, right, guys, you know what? I've been to a cup final before and lost it. I want to go again. I don't care. Let's just get there first and foremost. If we get there, who knows what we can do? Maybe we can take it one step further and win it. And Roy's in the background, and he's doing that whole thing of, yeah. He's like cursing me under his breath, but with a smile on his face as well. So, yeah. I mean, Roy was brilliant. I've such fond memories of Roy as a manager, and what he's doing now at Crystal Palace is truly remarkable.
Well, I don't know. I was going to give you a sequence of games just to see if you remember where they came from, because I think there's a draw at Sunderland, there's a big defeat at Old Trafford, and there's a defeat to Manchester City. Sandwiched in between those games for Fulham is one match. Do you remember what it was? It's a nil. You've got a 0-0 draw at Sunderland. You've got a big defeat at Old Trafford. After the game I'm talking about, you lose to Manchester City, and it's Fulham 4, Juventus 1.
Yeah, that's right.
How can football provide that sequence of results?
Yeah, because we in the league we were pretty comfortable-ish. The focus was trying to see if we can get any further in the European competition, and the key for us was always at home in the European comps, because we were so strong at home. The stadium, I mean, Craven Cottage, I don't know what it was. I mean, I played there a few times before moving to Fulham, and it was always a nice atmosphere, great atmosphere. I'd say nice. That's how I always described.
Genteel.
Yeah, Craven Cottage before going there, and even being there, you know, it was an unbelievable place to play. And I was very fortunate to play it at a time when we had so much success at the club, and those European nights were something special. There was a belief around the ground. Even though we lost 3-1 away to Juve and then we're down 1-0 after 10 minutes.
I mean, you because you lived through it, you can kind of zip through but you know, I mean, that is extraordinary. You're talking about a very, very good Cannavaro, Grosso, World Cup winning penalty taker.
He scores.
Trezeguet, Salihamidzic, who's a legend for Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Poulsen, very, very good football. Kandreva, who'd go on and
Kamara
and AC, another World Cup finalist.
That's right. They did have their third goalkeeper in goal on that game.
Alex Manager.
Oh, that was the one away.
Away,
At home, they had at our game.
Yeah.
At Craven Cottage, they had the third goalkeeper in goal. Yeah, so we away from home, we were very disappointing. We didn't perform anywhere near as well as we could have. I think we were a little bit rabbits in headlights, a little bit, I think. And the fortunate thing was that away goal was crucial, obviously. And that's where European football comes into its element. That away goal was huge. Obviously, they scored.
Far be it for me to argue with you, Mark, but it's cancelled out within 2 minutes at Craven Cottage.
True.
2 minutes.
Yeah, true. But you know what? Like I said to you, we had this belief at home. It was never say die effort, attitude. The crowd just always believed, and I think part of it was also because the Fulham crowd, the supporters, they couldn't believe what we were doing. You know, we had Clint Dempsey up front, Bobby, Zoltan Guerra, Simon Davies. I mean, the engines these guys had, the work rate.
Duffer.
I mean, the work rate was insane. Our team, the way we were drilled, the way we played, the work rate, the way we closed teams down was brilliant.
When you're standing watching from your end, I don't know if you were at the Putney end or the Bishop's Park end.
Well, I was at Putney end when Clint scored the fourth one.
The fourth.
Yeah.
You're looking at you're just watching, and at that stage the traffic towards you is a little bit less.
Yes.
What are the sensations? What sticks in your mind? Because even though it's bouncy, it's still like 22,000 people.
I don't know, but you don't even know. But it feels like there's 50,000 in there. It's like the atmosphere was insane. I get goosebumps now thinking about it. So it's just how do you describe it? It's like, I don't know. I can only imagine. It's almost like probably winning the lottery, because it was like winning the lottery. It was. But obviously, you actually orchestrated it. You as the team, you created your own path. It's not like luck. Part of it, there is an element of it, but most of it is sheer determination. You've created your own luck. You've found your path.
Did they handle it graciously that night? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't really. I think they did. I mean, I remember we were, I think, on our, you're in your own element there. You're celebrating with everyone and the teammates and the fans, and you're trying to say, commiserations to your opponents. But some of them obviously go off straight away. They're all they're thinking of is what their fans are going to do to them when they get back in Turin, I think. How are we going to get back home safely? So it was more about just the occasion. It was like, Juve, we've just beaten Juventus. It's not like we've beaten... whatever, I know disrespect, we beat Basel away, which was an amazing accomplishment.
Juve's Juve.
But Juve's Juve.
How did the final get lost? Because, that must have been one of the most agonising experiences.
And it wasn't one of those games, like, when I was in 2006 in the final, we were out of it with about 20 minutes to go. We were completely out of the game. And that was purely because we tried to push and we tried to get back into the game, and we ended up being out of it because we conceded so quickly. Whereas this one was, we never felt out of it.
No.
We were in it the whole way. And actually we had a large sense of belief that going to penalties, we could possibly win this. That's just our belief. Whether that would have been the case or not, who knows. But the 2 goals that we conceded were so unlucky. The first one was a shot from distance that took a massive big block deflection that fell right in the pathway of Aguero from 6 yards out, and he slots it in. And then the winning goal, Forlan clips it, and it's going wide. But because Brede Hageland is so close to him, doing his job, it clips off his leg and goes inside the far post. And you just couldn't concede two like more unlucky goals in a final. And you walk off the pitch in the end just going, it just wasn't meant to be.
Does that mean that you're quite good at dealing with disappointment? Because that's quite a lot of stored up pain.
No, it's hard to take. But you put things in perspective. So at the time, and it goes on for weeks afterwards, it's like, and months afterwards, and it's that missed opportunity. I remember saying in the change rooms before the game, listen, let's have no regrets. Let's not look back at it and go, we should have done this, we should have done that. I don't think we walked off that pitch thinking, if we'd done this and we'd done that, we could have done it. I just think we walked off that pitch going, the disappointment, being so close but so far, and to concede 2 unfortunate goals. Really unfortunate goals. And then afterwards, even though I remember that night, just sitting there and very sombre evening, it was a bit of a celebration because of what we'd accomplished. And I know it sounds probably almost like not sportsmanlike, but almost like professional-like, because you've got to put things in perspective and just go, you know what, we're Fulham, a team that 2 seasons before stayed up with 15 minutes to play in the Premier League, went on this amazing run the next season, finished 7th, and we're in a European Cup final. Nobody gave us a hope anywhere on the planet to have done what we did. It's an amazing accomplishment, and it hurts like hell at the moment. But over time, you'll look back at it and go, "Wow, what happened?"
Not many of your colleagues speak like that. I understand it. As a good balanced human growing up, that's the right way to be. But that's not what the majority of footballers live like or think like.
I look at it and go, yeah, I've been to 2 European Cup finals and lost both of them. And when you talk, how many players go to European Cup finals and win them? How many players go to European Cup finals and actually just get to a final? So you're in an elite category of players anyway. And putting things in this perspective definitely make it easier to deal with.
Now be consistent. That means you're a double champion of England with Chelsea and Leicester.
No, I'm not.
You are?
No, because I never played a single game in either of those campaigns in the Premier League.
So you kept the first-team goalkeeper on his toes. You were there for the manager to rely on. The rest of the team knew that if you had to stand in, you'd have been competitive. If you can say that dressing room experience after the 2 European finals, how many get there? How many? You reached elite clubs. You were part of a daily work atmosphere.
Yeah.
Irrespective of pulling the jersey on a match day, that makes my argument, and I'm semi-serious about it, and it's not just to blow smoke at you. By that logic previously about the 2 European finals, you're a champion of England.
But I was a big part of both those campaigns. So I played in just about every game of those. I mean, the Middlesbrough one, I missed this return leg of the semi-final because I fractured a cheekbone. So I didn't play against Steaua Bucharest when we came back in that game. But the Fulham campaign, I think I played every single game. I've always been that firm believer is that you've got to. Me personally, for me to feel part of something, I had to participate in a meaningful game, be part of that. So, you know, I didn't play one single game, and I feel sorry for one or two of the guys that played 4 games and missed out on a medal because they were 1 game short.
Our lovely sponsors, Bet365, I asked a good question, and we're going to move to the close now. We're going to move to it. Personal taste. You're a good judge. There are criteria, but apply personal taste. To the question, who's the best goalkeeper in the Premier League right now?
Alisson.
Why?
What I like about him. I like his... First and foremost, I take my hat off to him wholeheartedly about the way he's adapted from Serie A to the Premier League. There have been untold amount of players who have failed to adapt so quickly. Top class players, world-class players. Paul Pogba's a great example. Not a shadow of the player that played at Juve, playing at Man United. And everyone can argue and say, well, a lot of people can argue and say, well, the team that he has around him don't play to him, blah, blah, blah. But for me, if you're a world-class player, you shine no matter how good or how bad the players are around you. You're going to shine. He doesn't shine enough, or hardly at all. Talks a great game, doesn't deliver very often. Alisson doesn't talk a game. He just delivers. And I like that about him. You know, he's got this sense of self-belief, you can see it, and his stature and his way he conducts himself, the way he holds himself. He produces. Technically, maybe he's not the best goalkeeper. However, I think the calmness, the steeliness that he's brought to Liverpool cannot be underestimated, together with Van Dijk in front of him, but you've still got to have a very good goalkeeper, and he's shown that. He's great with his feet. All-round game is very, very good.
Okay, coming now to the natural conclusion from that, before I ask you about a sore one. If I were to tell you that Courtois is now fit, having not been fit since Zidane took over, you've established why you don't like rotational.
Yeah.
Zidane and Keylor Navas are, as of now, Zidane's 2 goalkeepers. And as of literally while we're speaking, no matter when we broadcast this, he has to choose for the first time since he took over again. You're Zidane. Yeah. Who do you choose?
I'm Zidane. I would actually stick with Navas right now, because I think so much has gone on with Courtois this season. He's been so inconsistent, as has the team. He's been nowhere near to the level that he's capable of playing. I think he's found the move really tough. I think, you know, the mental side of it, the support, the fans, the amount of pressure he's receiving from them. I don't think he's done himself any favours in a lot of ways, the way he's conducted himself. I would leave him out of the team. I'd leave Navas there. Navas is equipped to it. The fans are happy with it. They have how many more games to go between now and the end of the season? And then the summer you start afresh. He starts a new season again. I think Navas will go because he wants to play. I think it's Zidane's way of repaying him. Brought him in, loved him, gives him an opportunity to play between now and the end of the season, to go, right, end of the season, you have an opportunity to go. And I think they're going to stick with Courtois, and he's going to be the #1 goalkeeper next season, together with Zidane's son and the other ones that's there. I
love the way you read your football. That's very shrewd indeed. Lucas Zidane is a very shrewd mention.
I think so, yeah.
Zidane is utterly, as fathers would be, dedicated to his son's progression.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful, because that could be detrimental to your own path. And I don't think he's that naive to think that, or to enact upon it. I think he's going to be calculated, and there's going to come a point where he's either going to think he's good enough to play week in, week out, or he's going to say, you know what, son, you're not quite at this level.
Then the get-out question here is a bad one, and it's not because I'm nasty. Lucas Neal, have you forgiven him?
Yeah, of course. Listen, I don't even think, you know, yeah, of course you can look at it and go, yeah, it was a rash decision. I mean, this is a World Cup second round game. At the time, I thought it was a penalty. At the time. My gut instinct, at that time, it's a penalty. And I've watched it as many other people as most other people have watched it, and there's so many different angles you can watch it. At some angles you look at it and go penalty, other angles you look at it and go he's dived. And you know what? Any other player in the same position as Grosso would have done exactly the same thing. Defender dives in, you make sure that you continue your movement so you're falling over him, and the odds are the referee's going to blow for a penalty.
You're an interesting man.
If you go to a VAR right now, it'll probably be, I reckon, be probably 75% given that as a penalty than not.
I'm surprised because, one, you're a better judge. You've played elite football. Two, you're viewing it from the other side where you can't quite see, you can't see Lucas on the floor because we're talking about the World Cup.
Yeah.
We're talking about a game where you have competed flat out with the team that goes on to win it.
Yeah.
To say you might have won, I think it was in there. Maybe it was slightly like Fulham Atletico Madrid. You were in the mix.
If we got past that round, and then I remember saying after the game, we will never ever have an opportunity to play or to beat a team of that calibre at a World Cup in that sort of position, to be in such a good position. And then watching the game, you look at the game overall, how many chances did we create? They created more chances than we did. We had all the possession in the world once Maserati was sent off, without real penetration. They were defensively, they were insane, which the Italians always are. Which is what the Italians do. The manager banked on going to extra time. He kept one of the players back, didn't put him on. Yeah, maybe over the course of an extra, half an hour, maybe we would have won the game. You would have fancied yourself to go on and win the game. But as it shows, with Italy, can never write them off. And at that point, they didn't perform very well throughout that tournament up until that point. That was their defining moment. They went on, they eliminated the Ukraine convincingly 3-0, and they got better and better as the tournament went on.
Penalty?
Was it a penalty? Or you mean
when
save?
When you're standing there 11 metres away from...
I knew where he was going. He takes all his penalties that way. I knew where he was going. And it was like, right, I'm just going to throw myself and hopefully get there. I just took it too well.
Did you?
No, didn't touch it. I wish.
Mark Schwarzer, you're a remarkably intelligent, affable and balanced human being for a man who's spent his life in this profession. I want to leave the last question as one that might give you a nice taster. Bet365 sent in to us saying, what's the favourite stadium you've ever played in?
Wow. My favourite stadium I've ever played in. I think what probably goes down as my favourite ever stadium, and only because of the result, the performance and the result, is it's called the ANZ Stadium, Sydney Olympic Stadium, in 2005 when we beat Uruguay and qualified for our first World Cup in 32 years. And it was the significance of the game, the whole history that had between Australia and Uruguay over the